What's up, everybody? Welcome to the NorCal Sports Report here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And today we have a very special guest, none other than Tom Jensen, writer for SI, host of NinerCast. He'll be here to talk about the San Francisco 49ers and their ongoing dilemma on how they're going to solve the issue of re-signing Brock Purdy. The Niners also continue their DC search as they invite new candidates in for interviews, and the one candidate they're waiting on seems to be getting more and more interviews each and every day. It's driving me crazy. The Golden State Warriors pulled off the win last night. Steph Curry was balling. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. And the San Francisco Giants making signings in the international market. That's always a good thing to boost up their farm system. Buster Posey is hard at work. It's going to be a good show, guys. And I'm ready for it right now. Let's go. This is the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And let's do this. What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 13 of the NorCal Sports Report. Actually, it's episode 14 of the NorCal Sports Report here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Like I said, we're going to have Tom Jensen, writer for SI, on here talking about the San Francisco 49ers. And then afterwards, we got some news on the Warriors, on the Giants, and a couple other things. Probably go over the NFL playoffs and what's coming up this weekend. A lot of exciting stuff, guys. Lots and lots of exciting stuff. But before we get to all of that, make sure that you follow IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, at IE Sports Radio. Head over to IESportsRadio.com and check out the website. You get a full catalog of all the shows we have to offer here on IE Sports Radio. We're putting together a big streaming event coming up Super Bowl Sunday to get you ready. It's going to be the road to the Super Bowl, a whole list of shows, one after another, leading you all the way up to kickoff on Super Bowl Sunday. And we're partnering with USRN, who will be broadcasting the game play-by-play. We'll be sharing that broadcast as well. So a lot of good things to look forward to as you move deeper into the playoffs. But definitely check us out on all those social media outlets. You can also find IE Sports Radio on all areas where you find your podcasts. May it be Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, YouTube podcasts, anywhere you find your podcast, you're going to find IE Sports Radio. And then also, when you go to IESportsRadio.com, go ahead and check out IESportsRadio.com/shop, where we have merchandise like t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and it's a great way to help support the network. So definitely check that out. You can follow me personally over at Dre Area Sports on YouTube, on Instagram, and over on X. Definitely like, share, and subscribe to my channel because, why wouldn't you want to? But at the end of the day, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky, premium brisket beef jerky. This jerky is on a whole other planet. You can order the jerky over at planetjerky.net or follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky over on Instagram. We're also brought to you by Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You can place an order for these wax seals over at IESportsRadio.com/wax seals. You can also follow them over on Instagram at SealTheDeal_wax seals. We're also brought to you by Vital Apparel. IE Sports Radio is proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use promo code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear, and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. And I'm telling you right now, mental health is a real thing. It's a really, really big deal. And it's something that I firmly believe in, that we need to invest money in the understanding of mental health because it affects everybody on every level. It's a real thing. And also our new sponsor, which is Raw Nutrition. They are raw nutrition supplements. You can go to getrawnutrition.com and go to that website to place an order. Use promo code IESR to get an additional 10% off of the raw nutrition supplements. So, guys, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Tom Jensen will be joining me from SI to talk about the 49ers, talk about Brock Purdy, talk about Robert Saleh and the possible defensive coordinator search, and a whole lot more. Guys, you're listening to the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
Minutes past the hour here on the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And today I'm joined by special guest Tom Jensen, writer for SI and host of NinerCast. Tom, what's going on?
How's it going, Dre? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for coming on here. Like I was telling you before the show, I like to get as many people on here as possible to give fans just a different perspective of the teams they follow every single day. And seeing as you cover the Niners, I felt this was a great match to talk to you about some of the issues, some of the stories that are surrounding the San Francisco 49ers. Now, one of the big issues that they're going into in this offseason is the signing of Brock Purdy. Now, he's up for a new contract. Now, obviously, yes, they could play him on his fourth year. I don't know if they're going to do that. They're probably not going to do that. And there's also a franchise tag they could place on him again. But I think at this point, they've made it clear that they want to bring him back and they want to get this deal done sooner rather than later. What do you think about the idea of signing Brock Purdy to a long-term deal? And where do you kind of see this, or how do you see this deal kind of working itself out?
I think the advantage for Brock is that the Yorks want this done, and that you go back in time and say the Jimmy Garoppolo deal, they got that done pretty quickly, and they paid him top of the market.
You know, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that. With Jimmy Garoppolo, they got that done super fast.
Right. Yeah, it was done in early February, I think. So if you go by that history, I think that Brock will be re-signed. And you think it through from a business sense, which is where the Yorks are coming from. And they'll say that, we want Brock signed because we want him as the future face of the franchise long term. And you've got this likable kid who's the quarterback, and quarterbacks can last in the league until their late 30s, early 40s. He's an investment that can pay off for a long time, provided that he executes well enough to stay on the team. So I think that suits him well. Plus, Kyle Shanahan has given him his vote of confidence and said that I believe Brock can get this done. He's my quarterback. And Kyle doesn't want to have to reinvent himself on quarterback again. So he's motivated to get this done too. So my expectation is they will get it done because all the decision makers are on board of paying him. And while you can make the football argument that technically they can make him play it out for another year, I don't think the Yorks or Shanahan are interested in doing that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And with the Niners going into next season with the Super Bowl being in Santa Clara, I think this is the one offseason. If you're going to go all in on your team to the max, it'd be this offseason because you stand to gain a ton of revenue with the Super Bowl coming to your stadium. So already it's like once the like right now they're not making any money in the postseason because their team is not in the postseason. But next season they're going to have the Super Bowl in their stadium. So yeah, if there's ever a reason to go big, it would be this offseason. And I see them doing a lot of big things because the fact that they already announced that about the post June 1st cut of Javon Hargrave. Right. They already put that out there like, hey, we're going to cut him. We'll explore possibility of maybe him coming back, but we're going to use that money elsewhere. And the one guy that I see them going after immediately when the season's over and when that window opens up is DJ Jones. I think that's the guy that they want to bring back in here. He's been linked to the Niners multiple times over the past 2-3 years. And I think that's a guy that they want in place of Hargrave because he's just a big, huge run-stopping threat, and that's what Hargrave wasn't. I mean, when they got Hargrave, it was like, hey, he's a huge pass rusher. They should wreak havoc. But instead, teams just ran at him because they realized he's not very good against the run. And so then they would just work him down to the point where I don't think he had much left in the tank by the end of the game because he's been trying to stop the run all game. He's not very good at it. So I think DJ Jones is probably the guy they're going to go after first. But I see them, making some big changes. Now, obviously, we talked about Brock Purdy.
Well, before we do that, let's take on what they're going to do in free agency. So DJ Jones is definitely somebody that they need to look at. He's top 5 in the league in run defense, and he knows the culture. He knows the team. He
Mhm.
knows the scheme, and they know what they can get from him. So all of that makes sense. The problem is his age, that 30, and we'll see if they are looking at somebody that's more a run pass guy as opposed to just a run guy.
Yeah.
And so if they are, if they want somebody that does both, the best free agent D tackle for that is Poona Ford from the Chargers. He has a PFF rating over 80 in both. He's proven that he can do both. And so if you want a player that's that dynamic inside, he's somebody they can look at. I think they'll look at defensive tackle with the first pick at 11, but they still need to make a free agent move for a D tackle. If I had
Yeah.
to, it would be DJ Jones. If I had to say what I would do, I would go after Poona Ford first. But
Poona Ford would be that'd be a really good signing. He's nasty as a defensive tackle. And that's the thing too, is that, when we talk about the draft, a lot of people are saying, everyone keeps saying they got to invest in offensive line. And we've been saying that since the end of the Super Bowl last season, is that they need to kind of bolster up that offensive line. Now granted, they did draft Dominic Pooney. He's really good.
sure.
But they got guys like Jake Brendel. They got guys like Colton McKivitz, who McKivitz actually wasn't that bad, but still, I don't think he's starting caliber material on a team that wants to get back to the Super Bowl.
And McKivitz was helped. McKivitz was helped by having Pooney next to him.
Oh, absolutely.
And I
he had
think
Burford last year.
Right. And then that's why McKivitz's play went up, is he had Pooney as a teammate beside him, cleaned up a lot of stuff that McKivitz couldn't handle, and Pooney did.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I agree with that.
you have to factor that in. But I agree. They need a new starting center, a new starting right tackle. The problem is Kyle Shanahan's philosophy in the offensive line is based on the floor, not the ceiling. He thinks that as long as you're good enough to start in the NFL, you're good enough for him. He looks upon the offensive line as a cap saving center. He doesn't spend money in free agency on the line to the right of Trent. And
Yeah.
in terms of the draft, one first round pick, and that's Mike McGlinchey in 2017, 2018.
Yeah, 2018.
And I forget exactly which, but regardless, that's the only first round pick he's spent on the offensive line.
Mhm.
And people are saying he needs to spend the first round pick, he needs to spend the second, the third, the fourth. They're not being realistic. You have to remember Kyle's history and his philosophy. He doesn't believe in drafting in the offensive line or spending on it.
Yeah, he
It's where he goes cheap, and that's what hurts Purdy. Part of the thinking in you say, okay, we're going to re-sign Purdy for all this money. Yeah, but if you're not going to invest in the offensive line, you're not optimizing Brock, and he's way better when he's protected. His rating is
absolutely.
astronomically higher. So if there's one quarterback where you would see a huge gain from an offensive line investment, it's Purdy. But I don't think Kyle's going to change his philosophy.
Well, and when you look at the teams that are competitive, especially in this postseason, you look at the Eagles. They have a stellar offensive line. The Lions, stellar offensive line. So it goes to show you the Chiefs, really good offensive line. They hold a lot, but they get away with it. Good offensive line. So it just goes to show you that the teams that invest in their offensive line, it makes a huge difference. Now, I think that maybe this year, now just fingers crossed, I think maybe this year Kyle Shanahan realized, if not John Lynch, like, hey, I know we usually kind of skimp on the offensive line because, that's what we do. But I think this is the one offseason where they have to address the offensive line. It was so bad this season that how can you not? At least last season, the argument could be, well, hey, look, we got to the Super Bowl. We almost won the damn thing. So really, was it that much of a detriiment? This season,
it was, though.
It was.
It was, because why did they lose? 9 unblocked pass rushers on blitzes.
Chris Jones came flying in unblocked.
Killed them.
Yeah.
Why? Because you've got McKivitz. It's just, why did they lose both Super Bowls? I would argue offensive line. Who do you put that on? Kyle, because of his philosophy.
Yeah.
So you can say, well, we made it. Yeah. Did you win? No. Why? Because of your offensive line philosophy.
Your offensive line.
So it's really frustrating for me.
It is, because
you look at the rest of the league is investing in it.
Yes.
And look at the Rams. I mean, they said our offensive line isn't good enough. We're going to invest in it, and we're also going to invest draft picks in it.
Mm-hmm.
And now their running game is an essential element of their offense.
Well, and that was a big, topic of controversy as well, is that, Kyle Shanahan chose, they went with Ricky Pearsall as opposed to going with an offensive lineman. Now,
Yeah.
I think Pearsall is going to be a good receiver. Granted, I mean, he got shot, didn't have a lot of practice time, so there were a lot of things working against him. And we saw towards the end of the season what he could possibly look like, and it was very productive. And I think having him, and luckily having him, knowing that Brandon Ayuk won't be back until like what, week 6, week 8, depending on how fast he recovers.
Middle of the year,
Mid-season. Yeah. So you have to have somebody out there. So I'm glad they did end up drafting Ricky Pearsall. But at the time, I was like, why wouldn't you go after your offensive line? And so that makes me a little weary going into this draft. Is that even if there's a sexy offensive lineman, it's funny to say that, but a sexy offensive lineman who's there waiting for them, I can see them, excuse me, I can see them peering over me like, there's a really good pass rusher right here. And honestly, I could see them not being able to resist and drafting a defensive end. I mean, it is an area they need help in. You got Leonard Floyd and Nick Bosa, and there was not a lot of depth there. You had Sam Okinawa, Yokohama, whatever. So you had Sam O there, but a lot of times they were lining him up as a defensive tackle. So you're just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And then there's obviously the Robert Beal, which I'm over the Robert Beal experiment. They tried. Yeah. And then what's the other guy who was hurt all year from USC? I forgot his name, but he was out all year. The guy they drafted.
Yeah.
And so they do need help there. But I really see them not being able to resist drafting a pass rusher. And I mean, it would help.
I agree. Sure it would.
Yeah.
They need a defensive tackle that can rush the passer. Because you go back to 2019 and say, look what their front four did when they had Buckner.
Oh,
that he would bring in double teams, and that would set up Bosa and Ford. And to me, they've seen what works. They know what works. So my expectation is, and I've broken down the draft. My last 2 articles were breaking down the draft on offense and defense. I think that defensively, the guy they're going to look at is Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. He's the best pass rusher at defensive tackle. He's the guy that can do what Buckner did. He fits their formula. So I think he's the guy to look at if they go D. On offense, you can say, you're investing in Brock. You've neglected offensive line forever. What are you doing? But you look at these players and you say, okay, Will Campbell, guard. Banks, a lot of technical issues as a waist bender. He's getting ripped apart right now by draft people. Ursary is 6'6", 330. Kyle won't go for that. He's too big. And the guy from Maryland is not worth or Missouri is not worth the pick at 11. And so pretty soon you're going through it and saying there's no high-end tackle. I mean, it's too bad they didn't have the 11th pick from last year.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Then they would have everybody.
All these guys were ready to rip.
Yeah, they could add anybody, but this year is a poor year for tackles. Probably the best tackle is Josh Simmons from Ohio State, but he's coming off a knee injury. So can you really do that after what you did with Kinlaw? Probably not.
No.
So my guess is that if it's offense, Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, because he's a red zone scoring machine. That's what they need. He had 17 red zone touchdowns in the last 2 years. That's exactly what this offense needs. So I think he's who they'd look at on offense. But my expectation is that Walter Nolan is the guy they're going to end up with. And I'd love that. I think Nolan's a great player.
I mean, Tyler Warren, like he's done a lot, but he's a tight end, I want to say. Yeah. And that's an area they need help in depth wise. I mean, George Kittle is George Kittle. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. He's over 30, but he had a great year last year. The guy's a gamer and keeps himself in great shape. But they did not have the depth at that position. Eric Saubert was just a dude running around out there. Right. It was George Kittle and a bunch of dudes. Like what's his name? Willis. Was it Braden Willis?
Yeah, Braden Willis.
He wasn't that great. He didn't run routes very well. He couldn't block very well. Cam Latu didn't even make the squad. That's how bad he was. So that's an area they need to kind of bolster up, is the tight end position. But I still think defensive end or pass rusher, defensive tackle, the guy you talked about at defensive tackle, that'd be great. Because if you sign a DJ Jones, then he could be the guy you bring in to stop the run, and you kind of have that, where you're rotating guys in and out. I was telling, who was I talking to? I think I was talking to Sterling Bennett, and I was saying, dude, it would not surprise me if the Niners somehow, if they were to bring in Robert Saleh. There was a couple guys over there in the Jets that were former Niners, and it wouldn't shock me if one of them made their way back to the team next season. One of which was Javon Kinlaw, possibly, and then Solomon Thomas, only because they went to New York because Saleh was there. So I can see Saleh vouching for one of them. Like, hey, well, let's bring in Solomon just as a rotational piece and just to give us some depth. It wouldn't shock me. I'm telling you right now, Tom, it would not shock me if they got brought in for preseason.
For me, Dre, I think the Niners have said that's a bridge too far.
Like, we've been there, we've done that. We don't need these guys.
We know what's wrong with Kinlaw. We know what's wrong with Solomon Thomas. We need to do better. Yeah. If we want to get better. And you're not going to have that much room in free agency in the cap to spend on a lot of people anyway.
Well, and the other guy,
you're going to have to be very, very strategic in saying, okay, we want this guy, as opposed to, well, anybody Robert likes, bring him on. They're not in a position to do that.
They're really not. But another guy that's out there that's going to be a free agent that's coming up in free agency that used to be on the Niners is coming off a bad knee injury would be Charles Omenihu. I could see them bringing him back, saying, hey, let's see what he's got. Let's see how he's recovered. And last year he made about $8 million. I think you'd get him back for a lot less than that because he didn't play at all. So you could bring him back for probably $2 to $3 million and say, hey, come in here.
I don't know about that. I think Omenihu has enough market power where he'd get at least 4 to 5.
Hey, that's true. But if he's coming off a season-ending injury, he still has to prove that he has it, that he can still, get that pass rush. So that's somebody else I could see them bringing in. But going back to Brock Purdy, where do you see this contract going? Because, obviously, I think I have one here, and this is from somebody that you probably know, from David Lombardi. Yeah. He threw out his projection on what he thought the Niners would give Brock Purdy over on 95.7 The Game. Let me bring that up real quick. And this here, it says 5 years, $305 million. That's $61 million per year. So he went over the $55 million. I thought they'd be right at about 55, but he went straight up to 61. What do you think about this contract proposal? Do you think this is going to be close to what he's going to get, or do you think that Dave is a little off on this?
I think it's close, but a little high. My projection when I was talking to Ashley earlier this week was 5 years, 285. And my thinking on that was part of the marketing of Brock is nice guy, humble guy. You go over 60, you break through a perception barrier. You'll be treated differently by the fans and the media if you're paid more than 60. If you go slightly under, if you're at 58, you can maintain his marketing image and you can kind of hide the number. You go 60, 61, you pay him more than Dak. You are asking for hyper aggressive scrutiny. And I think that Brock and his agent are better served to say, we're better off investing in Brock's current image by taking a little bit less than trying to climb the mountaintop and say, I got more than Dak. I don't think that's a wise decision for them. So I would go somewhere between 55 and 58 if I were them.
Yeah.
But Lombardi is invested. He's very invested in Brock's success. And he wants to make the argument that Brock's the best. So I think that's part of why he has Brock at this number. He wants Brock to be affirmed by the market, therefore 61. But if I am Mangin, Brock's agent, I say, we don't want to go over 60. We're hurting our image if we do.
I think so. And really, when you go over 60, any mistake he makes next season, they're going to be all over. Everyone's going to be all over him. Media, fans, and everything. I mean, we saw Dak Prescott. I mean, that poor guy. Every time he makes a mistake, everyone jumps all over it, and he gets memes made about him. It just opens the door for all that. So I do agree that I wouldn't go over 60 million, and especially if I was him. But at the same time, who knows what his agent is planning right now. The one thing that I was wondering about is because when we signed way back when we signed Colin Kaepernick, they signed him to a 7-year deal because they wanted to extend the longevity of his contract and also make it to where they were competitive for at least 4 to 5 years before they got to start paying him a ton of money. At that point, you start to restructure. So it wouldn't surprise me if they made an offer to Brock Purdy that was more than 5 years. That was like 6 years, almost 7 years, only because after if you do a 5-year deal, after 3 years, you're going to have to redo that contract because then it's going to start getting real expensive. And
Right,
so,
that's
go ahead.
why it would have a built-in 3-year out. I think that
Yeah.
that's what they would structure into the deal because of what you just outlined. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm expecting. 5,285 with an out in the 3rd year for that reason. Because it just becomes untenable. You know, the money would be too high. But the issue for the Niners is what's the money this year? And Jason
Mhm.
Hurley wrote an article on his site 49erscap.com. He's the cap guru, and he thinks that it'll be between 13 and 19 million for the cap hit in 2025, depending on the signing bonus.
Mhm. And that's the thing too, is that they don't want to hit the cap that hard, and obviously they want more flexibility and being able to spend on the players they want to resign, and the players they want to bring in. I mean, obviously you're looking at a couple of guys, Talano Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw. I
Right.
think you signed one or the other. I don't think you signed both.
I think they want to sign both. Lynch loves Hufanga. Yeah.
He
I would move
does.
on. I would move on from him. I don't
Yeah.
think he takes good angles. I think he gets hurt too often, and I think you're better served of tapping into the talent in this draft. This is a good draft for safeties. There's a lot of people out there they could use. I
And
would
not to
much rather
mention,
see that as draft a free safety. Don't
yeah.
keep Hufanga.
I mean, look, last year they got Malik Mustafa. He's not going anywhere. The guy's a
Right.
fixture out there at safety, but you still have Jair Brown. Now, last season in 2023, he had a good season coming in to take over for Hufanga. And I mean, he got the interception against Mahomes in the Super Bowl. I mean, he played really well. This season, a different story. And now I'm not sure what was going on with him this season, but he had a terrible year. I still, to me, I'm not ready to give up on Jair Brown. So that's why it's kind of like, hey, look, if I bring in Hufanga, I'm burying Brown as a backup. If you don't,
you're saying that Jair is over, basically.
Yeah.
You do that.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I don't trust you, but I trust him. So I want you to spend the whole season learning off of him. And it's kind of like, whoa, bro, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
why the drop off this year? I think that the drop off was because of Steve Wilkes. Wilkes was a great guru in teaching him. Is that his position as DB, and I think that he was integral in the development of Diamador Lenore, Jair Brown, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And losing Steve Wilkes, you lost that education, and we saw that in Jair. Jair started to take worse angles, started to make decision mistakes, started to make communication mistakes. Things that wouldn't have happened under Wilkes happened under Sorensen.
You know, like overall, I think getting rid of Wilkes was the right move to a certain degree. But again, this is like the Jim Harbaugh firing. You knew you wanted to get rid of him, but you didn't know who you're going to replace him with. I know they talked to Steve Spagnuolo, they talked to Bill Belichick, but to me that was aiming real high and trying to pull him away from the Chiefs. Like what?
And just wildly unrealistic. I mean, how could you ever bank on any of that happening?
Yeah, like we'll offer those. We'll go out for those two guys. But you can't bank on them even saying yes. Bill Belichick. They even said that Kyle called him. And before Kyle could even ask him, he's like, I don't want to be your defense coordinator. Like he almost knew why he was calling. He's like, I know what you want, but we could talk about whatever, but I'm not going to do that. So, and then they were left with Nick Sorensen, which, look.
Oops.
Yeah, I mean, trying to get back to the Super Bowl with a first-time defensive coordinator was the wrong choice. And then Brandon Staley, he was in charge of the passing defense. So he watched over the secondary, and you saw guys like Jair Brown struggle. And so, Steve Wilkes being a very a secondary defensive minded, he was always about his secondary. That's why you saw a lot of the safeties coming up and trying to make the tackles on the running backs, especially on screenplays. And that's what cost Hufanga his knee injury, because he came up trying to make a tackle, and the running, I forgot who it was against. It made him move, and then that's when he popped his knee. So a lot of things to look at. When we talk about defensive coordinator, obviously there's been a lot of talk about Robert Saleh, that they want him back, But as of now, I'm getting a little worried because Robert Saleh seems to be getting interviews left and right from, he has the Jaguars, he has the Raiders, the Cowboys, who recently got rid of Mike McCarthy, the big pork chop, Mike McCarthy. They want to bring him in. And I'm like, okay, hold on a minute. Look, I am all for bringing in Robert Saleh. That'd be a great move. But with the amount of attention he's getting this offseason, or actually, it's not even the offseason yet, their offseason.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. With the amount of attention that he's getting so far, it makes me weary of saying, hey, look, if you bring him in and you're successful by any means, and let's say you win the Super Bowl for crying out loud, he's going to be gone. There's no way he's going to stick around here for a number of years like a Steve Spagnuolo. I think he comes in, does 1 year, and then he's out. Another one and done, which has been the case with the Niners for a long time. But knowing Kyle and how stubborn he is, I feel like he's like, I don't care. That's the guy I want.
Well,
but go ahead.
Kyle's thinking is always now.
Yes.
Kyle doesn't have a planning horizon. It's right now.
Yeah.
And so he's going to do that with Saleh. And yeah, I don't blame him. Saleh's the best candidate for this team. He knows the personnel. He knows the scheme. He knows the culture. He knows Kyle. And he's worked with him well. So I don't think that there's any way that Kyle is going to say, well, this is taking too long, so we're going to hire somebody else. Not a chance. He's going to wait until Saleh makes up his mind. I think that Saleh has a chance for the job in Jacksonville because he was there 2014 to 2016 as the linebacker coach, and Shad Khan really likes him. Mm-hmm. And Saleh is not going to have an issue with Balky as the GM. Other candidates probably would. So I think that gives him a decent chance in Jacksonville. But the thinking right now, the rumor is that Flores is going to get that job. And Dallas, I don't think there's any shot that they'll end up hiring Saleh. He's not high profile enough for Jerry.
No.
And the Raiders are closing in on Ben Johnson. So to me, I think it's Jacksonville. And it's once Jacksonville says no, and if they hire or say yes, either way, I think that's the trigger point. That's when Saleh will know. I think the Raiders will announce Ben Johnson eventually. And maybe funny. He's just waiting until he's done for the season before he can announce. But I think that they're already moving forward and planning.
I think so too. Coach. Well, and you look at it, right? I mean, who the hell wants to go coach for the Raiders, right? It's always a mess over there. Yeah. However, look, he has his choice of quarterback. Who do you want for quarterback? We can draft one, or you can go sign one. I don't even care. He's got a high draft pick. He has more salary cap room. He basically has reins to do whatever he wants. He's got Tom Brady there. There's a lot of things that make that job very enticing for Ben Johnson because he gets to really do his own thing. If he were to come to a team that's a little more established, then he's got to deal with the players that are already there from the previous regime, and he's got to figure out what to do with those. So I think the Raiders make a lot of sense for Ben Johnson. I was surprised that Chicago didn't bring him in because I would have thought Chicago was going to go hard after him, but it looks like the Raiders are the ones that are going to get that. This comes courtesy of Matt Mayoko, so let's take a look at this. These are all the candidates that have already interviewed for the 49ers. Let me see. Maybe make that bigger. Let me see. Does that help? There we go. Robert Saleh, Deshae Townsend, and Brandon Staley. These are known candidates for the job. Sorry. And then for offense, you got Clay Kubiak, Noah Pauley, and special teams, Nick Sorensen, Jet Motkins, son of Curtis Motkins. He used to be an offensive coordinator for the Niners back in the Chip Kelly era. And then Chris Banjo and Chris Tabor, no relation to Tabor Pepper. So out of these guys here, where do you see them going? I mean, to me, I think it's still a little bit too early, but if you look at the way this is kind of set up, it almost seems like they're like, yeah, we interviewed those two guys, but we really want Robert Saleh. Yeah, we interviewed Noah Pauley, but we really want Clay Kubiak. I mean, they literally said he was going to get the job before they said, you got to interview, like, oh, crap. And then obviously special teams. I don't see them going with Nick Sorensen. I think Sorensen, again, is falling into that spot where if they can't get these other guys, they're going to go with Sorensen.
Well, I think they want Sorensen back. They like Sorensen. They want to keep him. And I think that Kyle has offered the job to him. I think the issue is more the reverse, that Sorensen doesn't want that job. Because remember that for him, he was the special teams coordinator in Jacksonville in 21. Mm-hmm. They were ranked 24th in special teams in the league that year. So do you really want to hitch your wagon to being a special teams guy when you know you failed the first time you tried it?
Yeah.
If I'm Sorensen, I want to be a DB coach. I know I can do that well, and I know that I can then advance my career that way. So I expect Sorensen to hold out until he gets a DB job somewhere else and then tells Kyle, thanks, but no thanks. I think that's what's going on. But until Sorensen gets that, he hangs on to the Niner offer as his fallback option.
Yeah, I want to say he was the DB coach last season with Steve Wilkes. And so that's probably where he wants to be at. But as far as I understand, Brandon Staley is in that position now. And Brandon Staley may not even return. We don't know what his status is in terms of what he wants to do. And again, I think Brandon Staley may be the next version of Nick Sorensen in the sense that if they can't land Robert Saleh and they can't land the guys that they want to land, they're gonna offer it to Brandon Staley because he's already in the office in the facility. So it's like, well, why not?
He's the in-house back burner.
Well, but at the same time, they haven't made at least publicly known that they've scheduled or even had interviews with Dennis Allen, with Amaruno. There's plenty of guys out. Ulbrich, they haven't brought him in yet. Yeah, and Ulbrich just did an interview with the Atlanta Falcons where he used to work. And so that worries me. I'm like, hey, look, these guys are out there, but I don't see you making an effort to even interview them. You would think they would have had these guys in the facility already, or a virtual interview. I mean, come on, something.
Yeah. That what surprises me is not talking to Ulbrich, because my assumption is that he's the fallback if Saleh tells them no. And Ulbrich makes sense as a former Niner and worked under Saleh and from San Jose and knows the Niners and knows the area and knows the scheme. So Ulbrich is just sort of a fits in the slot fit for what the Niners would want as a DC if Saleh says no. But they haven't talked to him, which to me is just strange. I'm surprised because everybody's expectation going into the process was, if not Saleh, then Ulbrich.
Yeah.
But that doesn't show up in what Matt is saying here. Deshae Townsend is a good choice. Detroit has a good system. Aaron Glenn is a very sharp DC. You can learn a lot from him. So, I wouldn't mind going with him, but I think that he was a Rooney Rule interview.
Yeah. Well, he has to be, especially when you look at the candidates that are already there. Now, Dennis Allen is another guy that, and I was saying this yesterday when I was live with Andrew of 49ers Takes. I was talking about how if there's any defensive coordinator out there that you could bring in and expect him to be there for a number of years, I would think it would be Dennis Allen. And the reason why is because he's had multiple coaching stints that have not really been all that successful. He hasn't had a stint where he's been there for a long period of time with a long period of success. He's had a lot of one and dones. I think he's a guy that is probably better suited as a coordinator. So I think that if you brought in a guy like Dennis Allen, I think he would be there for a number of years because he's not as attractive as to be a head coach compared to some of the other guys that are out there. Hence, Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich. I think if you get Ulbrich or Saleh and you bring either one of them in, they're both going to be successful, but both of them will be gone next season. That's my feeling on those two guys.
I don't know about Ulbrich. I think that would be true of Saleh. I'm not so sure about Ulbrich because he doesn't have the same resume.
It's true. He doesn't have.
I think he'd be under a higher profile, though. He would set himself up to go the following year.
Yeah.
But not in year one.
Sort of like a D'Amico Ryans, where after his second year, they were like, oh, we want this guy. And then
build the bridge first. But my concern with Dennis Allen is the personality. And I'm writing a column today where I say that if you combine Kyle and Dennis Allen, you have the Dower Patch Kids.
Yes.
Both of them have no personality.
They don't.
They're walking cardboard. So if you're going to have that, and this team depends on having the DC in the sideline to fire up the troops, you really think Dennis Allen is capable of that?
Is this the guy to fire them up? Probably not.
No. So for me, it's if they value that element of the defensive coordinator position, they cannot consider Dennis Allen, period. He's Kyle's clone. He's Kyle, defensive adjacent Kyle. You can't do that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Depends on that energy. Allen brings none. Power outage, zero.
And that's one of the things that I was talking about early in the week was that you have Kyle Shanahan. He's a very non-emotional, very quiet, very, in his head, introvert.
Yeah.
And so when you had Saleh and then you had D'Amico Ryans, both of which were high energy, high enthusiasm, rah guys on the sideline.
And
when you went away from that, you had Steve Wilkes. he was up in the booth. They had to demand that he come down because they're like, hey, the players want you on the sideline. And knowing Steve Wilkes, he's probably like, all right, if that's what you guys want me to do. I don't see it that big of a difference, but whatever. And he went down there, and even when they score, he'd be like, all right, good job, guys. It's just not who he was.
Right.
And then you got Nick Sorensen, who you're hoping to bring back what Saleh and D'Amico Ryans had in terms of their scheme, but he didn't bring that energy. I mean, how often did they show him on the sidelines where he's wearing a sweatshirt, hat, sunglasses, and just standing there by himself? It was just kind of like, okay, I don't see this guy with that same energy. And so, like you were saying, in order to offset what Kyle Shanahan's all about, you got to have somebody who's going to bring that energy to the sideline that keeps everyone riled up. And even the offense will get riled up over that. I mean, how many times do we see D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh, when their defense will make a huge play on the sidelines, screaming like, and that's what they're looking for. That's what they want. And I think Kyle's willing to do that, even if it costs him, if it's just for one season, he'll want to bring that in.
Well, I think that's why he wants Saleh, is he knows that works, and you're getting the mind to go along with it.
Exactly.
The problem with Allen is you're getting the mind, but you're getting no personality whatsoever.
Yeah,
and you have to be more self-aware to know if Kyle is a zero and Allen is a zero, you can't have both of them on the sideline. It doesn't work. Plus, you look at the Niner history and say, when were they most successful? When they had Saleh and D'Amico.
Yeah.
So this team responds to that energy and plays better as a result. So you can't have Dennis Allen.
And when you try and force one of these other guys to do that, it's
too out of character.
It's disingenuous. You're just like, okay, sure, buddy, right on. Like, hey, good job. You're like, whatever. I know you'd rather be in the booth, but it's fine. I see you're making the effort. Thanks a lot. We're talking with Tom Jensen, writer for SI and host of NinerCast. Tom, as we start to wrap things up on this segment, let me ask you. We talked about defensive coordinator. We talked about Brock Purdy. What other options are there for Brock Purdy? Because I mean, obviously, we're talking about signing him to a 5-year deal, 6-year deal, possibly anywhere from 55 to 61 million. If you look at what Lombardi says, but what other options are available to do with Brock Purdy? Like, where else can you go?
Well, if they can't come to an agreement on the contract and then he starts holding out, and the Niners say we can't possibly meet his demands. I mean, if it gets to that extreme of a situation, the one place that I would look is Tennessee. Right now, they are debating whether they pick a quarterback or Abdul Carter at 1 overall. They want to pick Carter. I would. And would I take Carter over Cam Ward? Yeah, in a heartbeat. So if the Niners are at a point where it's just intractable and they can't come to an agreement with Brock, I think that's where you would turn to Tennessee and say, and what kind of deal could we get? And you could look at that and say, okay, if we package Brock and a pick, 3rd or 4th, whatever, we can get Jeffrey Simmons. We can get our 2-way defensive tackle. And they were interested in Simmons at the deadline. They asked about him. They made an offer. So there's history there. Or the other thing you could do is just say that we'll offer Brock to you and a pick, in hoping to get Tennessee's pick in the 2nd, which is 35th overall. And that would be a huge value. That's where there's a lot of talent on the board. The sweet spot of this draft is late 1st, early 2nd. That's where you want to be. So I could see them doing that. If it got to a point where they just cannot reach an agreement with Brock, then I think they would look to Tennessee and see what they can get.
Yeah, no, I think it's a viable option. And I think that when you look at what happened last year with Brandon Ayuk, that was handled poorly. They needed to wrap that up, sooner rather than later, and they waited to the last possible minute to get that done. And I think that was at a detriment to their entire team, him and Trent Williams. It was like, man, you guys, let's get this wrapped up. And I think last year was the first year where they said, or I should say earlier this season, where they said, you know what, it'll be fine. These guys know the system. We'll get them in here. No need to worry. I think this offseason they realize they're going to go into it saying, hey, let's not let that happen again. That was atrocious.
Yeah,
and then we saw
Ayuk. They need to learn from that.
Absolutely.
Look how it derailed the whole season. And because you didn't have the continuity in camp, nobody played together. So you had to develop the continuity in season, in game.
That's not
good. And you saw that in their execution. Part of why the red zone offense failed early was because they didn't have that continuity going into the year. They
Yeah.
have to learn from that and change.
Absolutely. And I think that was the beginning of the end of
Yeah.
this season when they did not sort of button up that Brandon Ayuk contract.
Yeah, it dragged way too long, and it became a soap opera, and it became a distraction for everyone. And I think that also hurt their preparation for the year. Then you had Trent come in and say, "Look, you took care of Christian McCaffrey. What about me?"
Yeah.
And so I think that's another factor that they're going to have to weigh in this offseason is that I think that Kittle and Fred are both going to come in and say, "We want our version of the CMC extension," and I think they'll get it.
Yeah.
And the Niners need to make sure they take care of those and button that up faster than waiting until the end of camp before the season begins to sign them.
Because
You
Kittle
need them
and
both.
Warner, both of them have taken they've restructured their contracts in order to free up more cap space and take less money to help the team. So it's a matter of time before they come back and say, "Okay, I've done my part. I need you to do your part now. It's time."
Right, and they've earned it. Fred
Absolutely.
and Kittle are the best players of their position in the league.
Mhm.
And so they have to be rewarded for that. They also don't have guaranteed money. And so you have to come in and take care of them. And the value of that is both rewarding your veterans and wanting to set that example for the rest of the team. Play as well as these guys have, lead as well as these guys have. We will take care of you. You want to send that message to your entire roster. But beyond that, they can also get some cap savings that if they extend both Kittle and Warner, they can save $23.7 million on the cap. That's something they need.
They need to do that sooner rather than later. I don't want to drag on. I think they're going to be more on it this offseason because they saw how last season, I should say beginning of this season, it derailed everything.
Exactly.
Super Bowl hangover, players holding out, no continuity. It really showed. And I think they thought that, hey, once you get them in here, they'll be fine. And they realize now, no, they got to be in here early on to get this stuff done. So, Tom, I want to thank you so much for coming on here. We'll
Thanks,
ask you
Ray.
again sometime. And then tell everybody where they can find you and all of your content.
NinerCast at Twitter. And I'm still building my YouTube site. It's not up and running yet, but that'll happen soon. I want to have content before the draft and try to have previews by position.
Okay.
So that'll be coming up down the line. I've got an article coming out later today, I hope, that will be on what I would do if I was in control and what I expect to happen with Brock Purdy, with the coordinators, and with free agency. So
And
look
see,
for that coming out soon.
That's what I love. I love people who say, hey, look, I'm going to show you what I would do. I want to know what people are going to do, and it's well thought out. And that's why I asked Tom to come on here because the guy knows what he's talking about. I'm telling you. Tom, thank you so much, guys. When we come back, we're going to be talking some San Francisco Giants international signings and what they still need to do to be competitive in the NL West. You're listening to the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernick, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter at any time. Be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Thank you, Kellen, host of the Sin City Sports. Oh, Cale, sorry. Thank you, Cale, host of the Sin City Sports Report. Guys, it's 11:56, and we're talking now about the San Francisco Giants. Now, the Giants, yes, they lost out on Corbin Burns, and that was a big loss for the Giants, but they lost in a certain way because, I mean, look, they didn't want to give him the opt-out. I think he wanted that opt-out after 2 years, and that's just not how they want to do business, so I think they made a good choice on letting him go elsewhere, and unfortunately, he went to the Diamondbacks, who's in their own division. So now you have Corbin Burns in Arizona, Blake Snell going to the Dodgers. You got to kind of bolster up your bullpen. You know, you got to do something to help yourself out. I don't think that going for a starting pitcher is really in the cards anymore. I think it was at one point. But once they made the decision to sign a guy in Justin Verlander, I think that indicated that they're moving on to a different position. And I'm hoping it's not something where they say, okay, look, we're content with where we're at. We're not going to bring in any more hitters or position players. We're just going to roll with what we have. And I think that would be a huge mistake by the Giants and by Buster Posey by not bringing in more talent to help get this team more competitive in an already extremely competitive National League West. Now, let's talk about what they did do this past week. Trying to find the post right here. I'm not finding it fast enough, unfortunately, but they brought in Justin Verlander on a 1-year deal. And I think for the Giants, I think that's a great signing. Bringing in a guy, an experienced pitcher in Justin Verlander, a guy that can, a guy that can help lead these young guys in the bullpen. Because look, when you look at who we have in our bullpen, let me go ahead and bring this up so give you some context. If you look at who we have in our bullpen, right, we got guys like Hayden Birdsong, obviously Logan Webb, stud. Robbie Ray, who could be really good this season. He was good last season when healthy. And this season, if he is healthy, I think it's going to help a lot having Webb, Ray, and Verlander. Now, how long will Verlander last in the season? I don't know. The guy's 41 years old. He thinks he can pitch until he's like 45, I want to say. But again, this feels a lot like the signing of Randy Johnson, where you're bringing in a veteran, maybe on one of his last seasons, to help kind of teach and mentor the rest of these young pitchers. Kyle Harrison, another guy that he can help out. Tristan Beck. So you got a lot of young pitchers, but you had to bring somebody in here with some experience who's been there before. He's been in big games, he's won World Series, won Cy Youngs, and Justin Verlander, I think he fits the bill. I think, a lot of people say, well, this guy's washed up. He's old. I mean, look at last year. He had an over 5 ERA. But I think coming to San Francisco, playing in this ballpark, which is a pitcher-friendly ballpark, even though they've adjusted they brought the walls in, but still, it's still a pitcher-friendly ballpark. And I think that this is the right guy for what the team needs. My only concern is because of his age, how long is he going to last through the season? How long is he going to be able to make it to August, September? I don't know. I mean, this might be a guy where after June, he goes on the DL and he's gone for the rest of the season. Who really knows? But to start the season off, I think this is a good move for them. He's an experienced veteran pitcher who's been there, been in big games, won World Series, won Cy Youngs. I think he will help guys like Kyle Harrison, guys like Hayden Birdsong. Even guys like Logan Webb can learn a lot from Justin Verlander. So I know that when we had Randy Johnson, he helped a lot in mentoring guys like Matt Cain, Tim Lincecum, all those guys. So now having him here, I think will be a huge help for the San Francisco Giants. Now, the Giants weren't done yet. Obviously, they've been linked to other players. Pete Alonso is a guy I would love to see them bring in. I've talked about that before. But the Giants also made an international signing, which I thought was really, really good. And this is it right here. The Giants signed shortstop Josué de Jesus Gonzalez. And this guy is supposed to be the best ranked position player in the international market. He has a $3 million bonus. He's ranked number 2 in MLB's pipeline in top 50 prospects. The MLB pipeline grades. His hit power is 60. Hit 60, power 60, run 50, arm 55, field 50, overall 60. So, I mean, this is a guy that they see a lot of good things from in the future. Here's him actually batting. I know Larry B's probably screaming right now that I'm playing this. But still, I think it's going to be really good to bring in a top prospect infielder. Now, I heard some talk already that people were saying, well, why are they bringing this guy in when he's played shortstop and we just signed Willie Adames? Well, I think we have to see what kind of a shortstop De Jesus is. And maybe he's a second baseman at this point. We'll have to see. Not to mention, we have this guy in our system now. We have Bryce Eldridge in our system now. And I think the future is really bright for the San Francisco Giants because they're adding more guys to their farm system in order to help bolster up that farm system. Now, Buster Posey did talk a little bit with KNBR about Bryce Eldridge. Let me go ahead and pull that up. He's Buster Posey on Bryce Eldridge and his minor league development as a whole. He said, I think Eldridge's best case scenario for him is to get a solid year in the minors and go dominate. He might be beating the door down and forcing our hand. We'll see. We believe in what these guys are going to do. We have to continue to bring in talent through the draft and international signings, and that's what Buster Posey has done. He's trying to revamp that farm system, bringing in international signings, drafting the right guys, and I think that Bryce Eldridge, look, if you listen to what Buster says, I mean, he's basically saying, hey, look, if this guy is dominating down there and he's busting down the door, then we're going to have to take a look at him and see if we can fit him in the lineup. Because this could be your first base option eventually, or a DH, or left field. The guy can pitch too, but I don't think they're going to use him as a pitcher. And then there was this that came out today, which is the Mets are expecting Pete Alonso to sign with another team per Martin on NYC. So for the longest time, the Mets, and so this is what had me worried, is because his agent, Scott Boras, offered the Mets an exclusive contract in which he had to opt out after 2 years. And so he only offered that contract to the New York Mets, which tells me that, like, okay, he wants to stay in New York. New York's probably going to take this contract. They just signed Juan Soto. But now they're saying that they expect him to go elsewhere. Is because they don't want to deal with that 2-year opt-out. We saw it last year. Matt Chapman signed a contract with after 1 year as an opt-out. Same with Blake Snell. Now, they were able to re-sign Chapman, but Blake Snell, where did he go? He went to the Dodgers. So, again, I think that a lot of teams, they don't want that 2-year opt-out because basically you're signing a 2-year deal. And if this guy gets hurt, has a catastrophic injury, you're stuck with him for 6 years or however long the contract was supposed to be. And so it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. However, if I'm the Giants, I am all over this guy. I think Pete Alonso would be the perfect fit for first base. I've talked about this before. This is the guy I want to get in the clubhouse. This is the guy I want to be a Giant. Buster Posey, if you're watching, which I know you are, get this guy on the team. We need Pete Alonso. We need his power. Some would say, well, he's not a very good defensive first baseman. That's great. We can sub him out or you can DH. I don't care. I want his power in our lineup. him, Adamez, Elliot Ramos, Jung Ho Lee. That's a better lineup right there. Patrick Bailey. This guy will make our roster much, much better. And this is the guy that I want them to get, is Pete Alonso. So, good news for the Giants making signings in the international market. They did do a trade as well. Let me go ahead and pull that up. They traded Blake Sable to the Yankees, which I was a little shocked. I'm not going to lie. I was actually a fan of Blake Sable. But, it is what it is. But Blake Sable was traded to the Red Sox, actually. Sorry. Traded to the Red Sox as the Giants made 2 separate moves to acquire additional international bonus pool money. So they moved him and another pitcher in a trade to acquire more international pool money. This goes to show you that they're trying very hard to invest in that international pool signing. Now, bad news for the Giants is that they were informed by representatives of Roki Sasaki that he will not be coming to the Giants. Not a big shock. I expected this to happen. It is what it is. If you're a Giants fan, not a shocker. This happens all the time. And more than likely, this guy's going to go sign with the Dodgers. I fucking know it. I just do. Because that's what they do. That's what they do. The Giants making some moves, staying relevant, and Buster Posey is not going to give up on making this team competitive going into the 2025 season. Guys, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the Golden State Warriors and their game last night. Steph Curry was balling last night, and we're going to get into it after the break. You're listening to the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, are you in the market for Florida sports or just keeping up with the latest in the Panhandle? Palm Tree Sports is a dedicated audio hub to all things sports in the Sunshine State. We cover current events, big news, heavily favored opinions all across the NFL, NBA, MLB, and so much more. So come check us out every Saturday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a down south education on Florida sports and athletics. It's hosted by yours truly, Corey Pujols, and is powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Thank you, Corey. Let's go to one more, and then we'll talk about the Golden State Warriors.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Locke.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Fast Break with Davidson Crooks and Dentarius Locke. It's a great show covering all things NBA and basketball. 9 minutes past the hour here on the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And now we're moving on to our next and final topic, which is the Golden State Warriors. And the Warriors last night had a big game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are 21-18. And so they went up against this team, right? And so we're thinking, okay, we lost against the Raptors just the other day. A team that's 8-21. We lost. In a game we should have won. Warriors have played in a lot of close games this season and have not come out with any positive results, which is very, very frustrating, to be honest. But last night, they win at a final score of 116-115. Now, the Warriors had up to a 20 the 25-point lead against the Wolves, but that was in the first quarter. I knew that wasn't going to last. When you got guys like Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, especially Anthony Edwards, that lead isn't going to last. But the Warriors were able to hang on and win this game by 1. Now, how did they win this game was because of one man, which is Stephen Curry. Curry had 31 points, absolute baller in the fourth quarter. He hit 2 massive shots towards the end of the game, a 3 in the left corner, which gave the Warriors a 3-point lead, and that eventually led to the final score of 116-115. Steph Curry was their finisher. He was their closer last night, and he showed the Wolves every bit of why he still has a lot left in the tank. But they need to give him help. I've been saying this every single week. They got to get Steph Curry more help. Now, he did get some help last night. Andrew Wiggins played 35 minutes, had 24 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 big steals as well. Another guy that really came through for them was Buddy Hield. He had 18 points on the night. And Gary Payton. Gary Payton came back from injury last night, and boy, he added a level of intensity and defense that they haven't had since he left before Christmas when he got hurt. And they needed it. He had 6 rebounds, 7 points in 18 minutes. He contributed so much. Kevon Looney, 4 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, including the big shot from Curry on the left corner to give them a 3-point lead going into the final seconds of the game. At the end of the day, look, they played a solid game. They limited their turnovers. They limited the mistakes. And Steph Curry was able to cook at the end of the night, which led them to that lead. I'm still saying it, though. They need help. They don't have Jonathan Kuminga. He's out with an ankle injury. They don't have Draymond Green. They didn't have Slow-Mo, Kyle Anderson. And they're still out Brandon Pajemski. So, again, you're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that were hurt last night and that couldn't play. I mean, that's tough. I mean, your bench is basically, I mean, besides those guys, you got Pat Spencer and Lindy Waters. I mean, they're good players, the 2 guards, but I mean, you're down Draymond, who's like your makeshift power forward or makeshift center, and he's a power forward. Kuminga, who's a scorer. Pajemski, who's supposed to be your backup point guard. So you have a lot that you're missing and going up against a pretty good Wolves team as well. But the Warriors got it done. They did a good job at taking advantage of that big lead early on, and the Wolves had to really fight back to get back into the game. The Wolves never led in this game. They tied the game, but they never actually took the lead, and for the entire game. The Wolves never took a lead. So that was good to see the Warriors playing with that kind of intensity when it comes to defense. Now, the defense has been there for them throughout the season. It's the offense that's had a hard time scoring, especially in these close games. So to see them pull this one out was great. Especially going up against guys like Anthony Edwards. He had 28 points. Dante DiVincenzo, former Warrior, he had 28 points. Julius Randle had 17. Rudy Gobert had 7 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks. Naz Reid, the Warrior killer. He had 28 minutes. He had 15 points and 6 rebounds. This guy kills the Warriors every time that they face him. I don't know why. He does. He's the Warrior killer. Naz Reid. And Moses Moody. Let's not forget about Moses Moody over on the Warriors bench. He had 11 points in 24 minutes. He had some really good plays too. Dennis Schroeder, 12 points. He did foul out. So I need a little more out of Dennis Schroeder. I know he had 12 points, but I just need a little more out of him. More scoring. But I think that will develop as it goes on. I mean, this is a guy who scored 30-plus points against the Warriors earlier this season. And I've yet to see him do that on the Golden State Warriors. But there is talk. There is, obviously there's some rumors that they may be looking at Zach LaVine, who's been averaging 28 points a game the past few weeks. He's been playing really good. I don't know if that's the answer, because you give up Zach LaVine, who has a massive contract, and what do you give up to get him? These trade proposals are always like, oh, it'd be like Pajemski, Kuminga, Looney. I'm not going to gut my team to get one guy in here who may or may not be the answer for the rest of the season. But they got to do something. They got to get somebody in here to help out, but not at the detriment to the future of this team. And even Draymond and Steve Kerr talked about that. They don't want us to make these irrational moves that gives up our future, like guys like Podziemski, Kuminga, Moody, giving them up to get one guy who may be here for 1 year. It's not worth it. Now, if it was Kevin Durant, I'd probably say yes, but still, I don't think it's worth giving up our entire season or future just for the one season. So I agree with Draymond and with Steve Kerr, but the Warriors got to figure it out because, like I said before, this season's going to pass them by real quick. Before they know it, they'll be sitting out of the playoffs, and they'll be on the outside looking in. So definitely something to think about if you're the Golden State Warriors. Guys, that's going to do it for the NorCal Sports Report. I want to thank Larry B for putting this on. I want to thank everyone over at NorCal, over at IE Sports Radio for being the best team out there. We got a big streaming event coming up, Super Bowl Sunday. The road to the Super Bowl goes through IE Sports Radio. We're going to have a whole list of shows lined up for you to listen to coverage of Super Bowl 59 on Super Bowl Sunday and a play-by-play broadcast by USRN right here on IE Sports Radio. That's going to be cool. Can't wait for that. More details as we get closer to the Super Bowl. The Niners need to figure out who they're going to get for their defensive coordinator and need to figure out this Brock Purdy situation sooner rather than later. Tom Jensen joined us earlier from SI to talk about that. Definitely check that out. The Giants are busy making moves, getting players to be competitive, and the Warriors pull off a gutsy win last night against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Guys, tune in next week for an all-new episode of the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Wednesday, 11 a.m., we'll be back at it again, and I'll see you guys next week. Until then, peace!